welcome everyone to this episode of Freedom Hub's Working Group. I'm your host, Jeff Cantor, along with Charles Froman. We're sponsored by the Marketplace for Health, Wealth, and Freedom, which is found at your-mp.com, and it is a disruptor's intersection, as you'll see, and today is no exception. We also run a sister show, so we're doing a little shameless promotion here that's on the cash patient side, where we're trying to help drive the market away from insurance and into the idea of cash patients and cash doctors, and we've got a great archive to watch. But again, most importantly, all of it is found through the main website. So to take a quick diversion here, let's pop over there for a quick second. There's an awful lot of neat things to see here in the way of various drop downs, but underneath the home is where you'll find the webinars today, and then the continuing the conversation, which is probably the more important part of the two, because after you've heard a great conversation, you might want to engage in what that topic is pertinent to. So if you click on that link, it takes you over here, and over here you'll then be able to tap into all the guests that we've had over the years in the background here, and needless to say, they're all really good. Some of this stuff's been around for a while, but it seems like as fresh as yesterday. The other big area to be cognizant of is under the Freedom tab, Fighting for Freedom. If you click on that here, you'll see a bunch of items as far as action items to deal with, and different groups that are working on freedom from a variety of aspects. You'll want to ideally participate with all of them, because they're all doing different things in many ways, and they're all important to you. But let's get into today. So if we go under home once again and click on webinars, you end up on this tab, and over here there's a little introductory description, and then a breakout on the two separate calls. As I indicated, we do two. And then just to jump ahead for a minute, it shows you who's coming up so you can plan ahead. And then here, most importantly, is where all the archives are. So today we're on the Freedom Hub Working Group. Let's say we wanted to see this video on Brighteon, so you just come back here, click on the link, and lo and behold, all the videos are here. Oops, let me get this out of the way. And all the videos you will see are here over the past years, as we've said. And you'll see this one up here by weekend, and you'll be able to share it with everybody you'd like, and please do. We definitely get some interesting feedback as time goes by between all these different platforms, BitChute, Brighteon, YouTube, and Rumble. And we'll add some more as they come along. So there's some great resources out there, and we try to reach as many different types of audiences, because each of these has a different viewership. But let's get a little bit into where we are today. And on that note, I'm going to have Charles jump in here and do the honors.
Gladly, Jeff, and welcome, Rick. We are discussing polluting our water, which the government refuses to stop doing, specifically with fluoride, and more accurately, a compound including fluoride that's pretty nasty. So nasty that apparently almost 100% of other civilized countries, mostly in Europe, don't pollute the water in that way anymore. And it's up to local communities getting their local governments to stop the fluoridation of the water in this country. It's something that's hard to do. In fact, I think Rick will tell us about the latest front on this in this war in eastern Washington, in Spokane, where I think the corrupt political creatures are going to try and start fluoridation, which is pretty crazy, since I think most people by now know that it can't be as good as the dentists say it is. Rick isn't the first presenter. We had Barry Hess, our libertarian friend from Arizona, who's in the business of selling filters for your water. Sure, he's self-interested, but he definitely knows a lot about the controversy, and that was a great webinar. And as Jeff showed on our website, with these political issues that we advocate, these are big issues going against pretty powerful interests, and therefore they're going to be efforts that are going to extend and last for a long time. We're not going to fix fluoride in the water, just like we're not going to fix the corruption in the pharma control of the vaccine regulatory apparatus, or telecoms control of the FCC, or any other corruption in the government allowing special interests to harm us without too much recourse. Rick is one of the experts in the field. He's retired, and he's a consultant for a lot of people that are getting more active in this area. He has worked with Physicians for Social Responsibility and the American Cancer Institute. And Jeff, I'm excited to see where this big controversy is now. Because selfishly, as folks know, I also teach Kundalini yoga, and we like to talk about the glands. And the pineal gland is an important one when you meditate, right there, that walnut-shaped thing in your brain. And apparently, this fluoride compound calcifies that gland, which is really important for meditation. So that's my own selfish interest for this topic, Jeff, and I'll leave it at that.
No, that's good, because ideally this isn't something where everyone's going to start to think about themselves. So Rick, we are excited. I'm going to give you control of the screen and let you enlighten us here.
Okay, well, thanks. And thanks everybody for tuning in. And to answer the question in the title that was promoted there, why is the US still doing this while like the European countries and others are not? And so to address that, I just want to look at the 5 main myths of fluoridation and go from there. And to start off with, I'd like to give you my background, as Charles mentioned. Mainly, it's been a nonprofit health management. I worked for the American Cancer Society for 21 years, and I was the executive vice president or CEO of the Oregon division for the last 5 of those years. And then the Oregon Physicians for Social Responsibility for 7 years. And I was the founder of a program there, the Campaign for Safe Food. And then I retired. And that was basically my work career. Now, just in terms of fluoridation, I favored it most of my life. I thought, well, if the CDC said it was okay and American Dental Association said it was okay, and nobody wants kids to have cavities, right, or adults, I thought it was fine. I didn't question it. And then I got a phone call from a friend about 11 years ago, and I'm not, by the way, a doctor. That's the first thing I want to say here. I've just worked with them, and scientists and dentists actually, for virtually all my life. She knew that I worked with a lot of these professionals, and she just asked me, would you look at the science on fluoridation? And I said, okay, I can, but I'm in favor of it, basically. Well, once I did, I was amazed. There was just substantial evidence of several harmful effects. And also just noticing then how most of the world just did not fluoridate. And I was always going on to the assumption that most of the world did, like much of the US. So then I got interested, and I just, as a volunteer, I've never done this for pay, just as a volunteer for various groups in various cities and countries all over the US and Canada, and even a little bit in other countries. I've been a volunteer, so that's what I do. I wanted to look at the main point here. No one should be forced to ingest a drug they don't want through the drinking water, taking away your right to informed consent. That's our main point, that right now you have a choice whether to use fluoride or not. You can put it on your toothpaste, and by the way, I'm not opposed to topical applications of fluoride, but once you ingest it, it's a whole different ballgame. So right now, if you don't have fluoridated water, you have a choice. Once you put it in the water, for all intents and purposes, you don't, unless you take a lot of measures to avoid it. And even then, it's going to cost you quite a bit of money. So let's take a look at these myths. Number 1, fluoridation has been proven safe for everyone. You're going to hear this all the time. So let's take a look at the little known history. Back in 1945, they started 2 experiments between 2 kind of twin cities or similar cities, Grand Rapids and Muskegon, Michigan, and Newburgh and Kingston, New York. And they were going to they fluoridated one, the Grand Rapids, Newburgh, and they did not fluoridate the other, and they were going to see what differences. So one mainly effectiveness and one in New York mainly for safety. These were supposed to go for 10 years. Well, look what happened. 5 years later, June 1st, 1950, the US Public Health Service endorsed fluoridation. This was the turning point from investigating fluoridation, effectiveness and safety, from promoting, and that includes funding. And as soon as the US Public Health Service did that, Right along came the American Dental Association, the Public Health Association, and a year later, the AMA. And that was it. Then you've got the leaders of the American medical and dental establishment just saying, hey, this is just fine. It's safe and effective. Look at what happened. All these other organizations just figured they're the experts, so let's go along with them. It must be safe and effective. Now just look though, no long-term studies on any health harms, and no studies whatsoever cited on most health harms. And they're declaring this with certainty. Take a look at this. 1950, that's when they did that. And look at the first studies ever published on all these different harmful medical conditions that have been linked to fluoride. Many of them not even starting until the later 50s, the 60s, some the 90s. IQ loss, for instance, 1993. This is how off base this endorsement was by the US medical establishment. How premature and how false. That's the little known history. And here's the little known chemical that's going in your water, fluorosilicic acid. I always preface this, what I'm about to say, by saying, this may be hard to believe, but it's true. What's being added to fluoridated water is an industrial waste byproduct from the phosphate fertilizer industry. It's often imported from China. It is classified as a hazardous waste. If they didn't put it in the water or use it for some industrial use, they have to dispose of it as at a hazardous waste facility. Believe it or not, it can contain lead and arsenic. And the EPA has determined there are no safe levels of lead and arsenic. This is what's going in your water. This is not the same fluoride that is going in your toothpaste. 2006, the National Research Council publishes, after 3 years of research, the most authoritative, comprehensive, balanced review ever done on fluoride. It wasn't directed directly at fluoridation, but you can see by the title, this is what it's all about, fluoride and its harmful health effects. This was conducted by a blue ribbon panel of scientists, 12 of them, who looked at over 1,100 studies. It is considered the most balanced. Both sides actually refer to this. I've never seen it really criticized at all. This is what I was reading. And when I first got notified, I started doing my research, I looked at this, and I couldn't believe it. Unequivocal statements about fluoride. Interferes with the functions of the brain and the body, is an endocrine disruptor, decreases thyroid function, diabetes, and then all these gaps, which this book just absolutely said that we just don't really know, okay, if it's safe or not. Again, this is 2006. The government had pronounced it safe in 1950. This is how premature it was. This directly contradicted those certainty of safety pronouncements. Those are the statements on the science. Just look at what some of these scientists said. Hardy Lineback, both a scientist and a dentist, the only Canadian from Toronto, former head of preventive dentistry at the University of Toronto. My opinion, evidence of fluoride is more harmful than beneficial is now overwhelming. Okay, Robert Isaacson, now deceased, had no fixed opinion. The more he learned, the more he was convinced it was a mistake. Kathleen Thiessen, an independent consultant, the fluoride concentration of 0.7 milligrams per liter, that's the US, Canadian, the limit is 1.5, will not protect all members of the population from its adverse health effects. I'm about to become very critical of the CDC. So before I do, let me just say this. They've got a lot of good people. They've done some really good things. But having said that, I just want to say the oral health division of the CDC, what they are doing and what they have done is frankly shameless. So let's get right to it. This was a letter of support that was written to, it was a discussion that came up about fluoridation in Loveland, Colorado, just a few months ago. This was a written statement of support of fluoridation, written by Casey Hannon, the director, and Lorena Espinoza, the associate director of the Oral Health Division. Expert panels have not found convincing scientific evidence linking fluoridation with any potential, not any confirmed, but even any potential adverse health effect or systemic disorder besides fluorosis. Really, let's just take one example and blow this right out of the water. Neurotoxicity, in other words, brain damage. We're talking permanent brain damage here. Overwhelming evidence of IQ loss. The National Toxicology Program has been doing for about a year and a half now, I believe, and a systematic review of the neurotoxicity of fluoride. This is what they've come up with. 44 out of 46 human studies have shown the higher the fluoride, the lower the IQ in kids. For the highest quality studies, 25. Higher the fluoride, lower the IQ. The highest quality studies at fluoride levels equivalent, like in fluoridated water or equivalent to it, 11 out of 11. The higher the fluoride, the lower IQ. This is not just one or two studies. This is overwhelming evidence. And you've got the CDC saying they can't find any evidence whatsoever. So you may not be aware, but right now there has been going for about 2.5, 3 years now, a lawsuit against the EPA, and it is alive and well. These organizations here, you can see, and numerous individuals filed this lawsuit based on the significant IQ loss. There was a trial held last year. The next hearing is coming up next month. So there are no guarantees, but the judge has already said, and these are direct quotes, there is serious evidence here of neurotoxicity. I was talking about fluoridation, and EPA should take a second look. So again, we cannot guarantee how this lawsuit will turn out, but we are cautiously optimistic. And this would be a major blow against fluoridation if we win it. Just want to let you take a look at 4 studies that were brought up in this trial. The one on the left and the 2 on the right. You don't have to know all the little numbers there, but you can see the graph. And here it is, the higher the fluoride. Now this is maternal fluoride, by the way, on the first 3. This is for pregnant women. What is going on with them? The higher the levels of fluoride, the lower IQ. And this can be significant. We're talking about 3 to 5 IQ points. This is a lot. And it can be more in certain cases. It depends on the individual. Some people would not be affected at all. Others could lose 9 or 10 IQ points. It all depends on your genetic makeup and other influences in your environment. The second study from the left, that shows an increase. That's an increase in ADHD. The higher the fluoride, the higher the levels of ADHD. The most amazing thing about this is that the EPA scientists speaking for the EPA acknowledged the 4 strongest studies ever done were all at levels in fluoridated water. The 4 ones ever done. And yet fluoridation supporters have been taking pot shots at these studies ever since they came out saying, oh, they're no good, they're no good. Even the EPA in the trial under oath admitted they were the best. Myth number 2, fluoridation, one of the 10 greatest public health achievements of the 20th century. Again, this is from the CDC. Really, take a look at this. 196 countries in the world. 172 don't fluoridate at all. Only 24 do. And of those 24, only 10 at levels are more than 50% of the population. Fluoridation is actually one of the most widely rejected practices in the world. Charles brought up about Europeans. Let's take a look at what the Netherlands has said. It's prohibited. They banned it, okay? And why? Because it shouldn't be used as a vehicle for pharmaceutical intervention, okay? And again, it takes away your choice whether to ingest fluoride or not. Now, can you imagine, just the idea of putting a drug in drinking water? This is the only one, by the way, in the world that is allowed to be put in drinking water. It's like saying, a lot of people get headaches, so let's put aspirin in the drinking water to take care of it. It just, of course, and many people have very serious reactions to aspirin, even though it's considered generally a very safe drug. This is the absurdity of what is going on. Sweden, also banned, not allowed in Sweden. Any new scientific documentation just has not altered the conclusions of their health ministers. I'm just giving you 3 examples here. Germany, generally, it is forbidden, okay? They do allow exceptions. However, nobody's applied for an exception. And again, the argumentation is the problematic nature of compulsory medication. They're forcing you to take a drug through the drinking water. Coming back to the US and Canada, some organizations that are opposing. You can take a look at the list. These are some of the most progressive organizations out there. And a variety of them all over. OSICOR, that's a Canadian coalition. 234 groups have signed on against this. And these organizations, many of these are more mainstream. They used to support it, but as the science that keeps coming in, they no longer do. So these are some of the big ones down there, and the science has just continued to come in on these conditions. And some of these are consumer advocacy groups. Some of them deal with direct human health harms. Myth number 3, it's effective, children and adults. Really, okay? The average cavity rate, generally acknowledged, about 2 cavities per kid, averaging 6 to 17-year-olds in their permanent teeth. The CDC, this is the one statistic they will give you, 25% reduction. Now, that in itself is very questionable, but let's just take them at their word, okay? If you apply that, just do the math, this comes out to half a cavity per kid per childhood. That's it. That's what, that figure, the half a cavity, that's what they're not telling you. The Cochrane collaboration, this is not well known outside scientific circles, but they're considered the gold standard of measuring effectiveness. Quote, we didn't identify any evidence to determine the effectiveness for preventing cavities in adults. And in terms of helping the poor kids, this is always used as an argument, insufficient evidence to determine whether it changes disparities between in socioeconomic status between high-income families and low-income families. They just weren't seeing it. And World Health Organization data, look at this graph. Okay, the solid, darker solid lines represent mainly unfluoridated countries. The dotted lines represent more fluoridated countries like the US and Australia, New Zealand, mainly English-speaking countries that have been under heavy influence from the United States medical establishment. And as you can see, over the years, cavity rates have dropped, generally speaking, throughout the world. As you can see, there is virtually no difference whatsoever between fluoridated and unfluoridated countries. Myth 4, fluoridation helps low-income families. You're going to hear this all the time. No, it doesn't. It hurts low-income families. First, as you just saw, it's minimally effective at all, if at all, at any income level. The Cochrane collaboration, again, insufficient evidence of this. And low-income families use more infant formula which has now been linked to lower IQs once parents are using that with infants. Very strong science on this. Now, if you've got enough money, you can afford it, you can buy an expensive filter. Chances are the cheapest ones you can get, you're running $350, $400. That's the cheapest for a little Brita on top of the counter will not take out fluoride. Or if you want to continually buy unfluoridated bottled water. Even if you can do this, you don't want to, that gets to be very, very expensive. But low-income families can't do this. They can't afford these alternatives. They have no choice. And again, this is taking away choice for all people, but especially low-income families. That is just not right. The last myth, it's cost effective. Oh, really? Just look at what happens here. 99% of water is going down the drain. It's not even being swallowed. Toilet, showers, whatever, it's going down the drain. And as Dr. Bob Dixon up in Calgary, the leader of the Safe Calgary group up there, said, it's like prescribing 100 pills and throwing away 99 of them. This is a total government waste of our taxpayer dollars. Now, the fluoridation promoters will say, well, if you spend $1 on fluoridation, you're going to save in future reduction of cavities. I've heard, you hear all over the map, $20, $28, $38, I've heard them all. Well, not one of those studies supposedly showing these savings accounts for any increased expenses for health harms or loss of income from IQ reduction. There have been several economic studies done. For every 1 point IQ reduction, that is a loss of about $18,000 income for every 1 point. And the cost of dental fluorosis alone, dental fluorosis, if you're not familiar with it, is a staining of teeth. Some of it is not very visible. It can be yellow or brown stains. For treating that, the cost of that alone nationwide eliminates any supposed savings of fluoridation. That's just fluorosis. That doesn't count any other harmful condition. What we're seeing with fluoridation is very similar to what we've seen with government regulation of other substances. You can see when they've been introduced and when the scientific evidence had accumulated to finally when the government took action and banned them between DDT, asbestos-leaded gas, and DES. And you can see it took decades. And the thing is, harmful health effects were known about these substances long before the government took action. But there was so much pressure, typically in this case from industry, that the government just lagged behind. In this case with fluoridation, it's not so much industry, it's more the US medical establishment that is keeping this going. And just take cigarette smoking, for instance. Here we are, here's a dentist, picture of a dentist recommending Viceroys. This is out of the late 40s, early 50s. And here is a doctor promoting Camels. Okay, this is just our recent history. This is ads of doctors supporting cigarette smoking, appearing as late as the mid-1950s in the Journal of the American Medical Association. This is what it takes, even though a lot of scientific studies have been done in the late 40s, early 50s, showing, maybe not absolutely proving, but showing, hey, there are a lot of danger signals of cigarette smoking on human health. But again, it takes a long time for the government to take action. So what can you do? Well, for information, I don't know of any better organization than the Fluoride Action Network, fluoridealert.org. This is an amazing website. Not only it's very lay friendly, you can find out all the latest in very easy to understand terms for the lay public. But then there was one entire section on it for those really geeky people, like the scientists that are really looking into this, that has documentation on virtually any scientific study having to do with fluoridation that you can imagine worldwide. It is probably the biggest depository of information on fluoride and fluoridation you can find anywhere in the world. So I strongly recommend them, and I have worked closely with the FLUORIDATION Network as an independent consultant, and I still will. I think you're one of the finest organizations I've ever worked with, and I can tell you, between the American Cancer Society and the Physicians for Social Responsibility, I've worked with some of the finest people, doctors, scientists, dentists, you can find anywhere. They're just great people. I can tell you this, the professionals with the FLUORIDATION Network are the equal of any of them. They're that good. On a personal level, so for effective cavity reduction, one, reduce sugar and processed foods. So much of this is the food you eat and what you drink. And if you're drinking soda all the time, eating a lot of starchy foods, a lot of sugary desserts, this is definitely going to increase your chances of getting cavities. This is really nothing that anybody doesn't know, but the emphasis on that, I really want to put that there. And then just everybody knows this too. Good home dental habits, brush at least twice daily, floss. And finally, just get regular dental checkups. Again, for low-income people, this is a problem. However, all low-income kids are eligible for free dental care under Medicaid. So a lot of people don't know that, but there has been a problem here in that a lot of dentists will not take Medicaid patients. So that has been a problem in a number of areas around the country, but it's something definitely everybody should check out if you need to. And to end fluoridation, well, we're looking at a number of fronts. Obviously, the lawsuit is front and center. That would be a huge step forward. This is the judge deciding whether water fluoridation is an unreasonable risk to human health. So we are doing everything we can in that lawsuit. It is that important. The biggest citywide campaign right now, it's Calgary. Calgary population of about 1.4 million. The biggest campaign in the world. They are having a citywide vote, a plebiscite, October 18th. So a major battle going on in Calgary. So I shamelessly say, unapologetically say, please make donations to Safe Water Calgary, the group up there leading it, at that website there, safewatercalgary.com. And with that, I'll finish, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
All right, very good. Well, I'm going to throw it open here with some questions. Everybody else, if you have some, please go ahead and raise your hand. I'm going to ask you a few different ones real quick, which will kind of give me a fast answer just so we can get to some everybody else's questions. You mentioned bottled water. So is all bottled water fluoride free, or does it have to say so on the bottle?
It does not have to say so on the bottle. Most bottled water, I'd say, is fluoride free. If it does have fluoride in it, then they do require it to say if that it contains certain levels of fluoride. But most bottled water you get is unfluoridated, but it's good to inquire about it. If it's coming from a spring, a mountain springs, if you know that. But if it's just tap water that they've stuck into bottles, then look out. You really can't be sure unless you ask specifically. So I'd be careful on that.
And then any of the filter systems you talked about in general, does it say that it removes fluoride? And if it says so, is that pretty accurate?
Well, it's to be absolutely totally safe. The reverse osmosis systems, which are fairly expensive, even more than the $350, $400 I was mentioning. Those, to be absolutely sure, the reverse osmosis. There are some countertop filters that will take it out, but a lot of them will not. And I would, what I would suggest is you Google and really press these companies to confirm they've that they can actually take the fluoride out. So that is what I'd recommend. There are a few that do, and there are others that just do not. Like I say, very simple, countertop filters. No, they're not going to take fluoride out.
And you also described how a lot of it's wasted, which is obvious. I'm hosing down the driveway or I'm flushing the toilet. So I'm fluoridating all the water, but I'm not using all of it for any meaningful purpose why it's intended. So ideally it's for just drinking purposes. Well, if you're doing a filtering system, I'm not looking to try to filter the whole house, am I? Or am I? Because what's the consequence of me showering with fluoridated water?
Well, most people, if the fluoride is just on the surface of your body, chances are it's not going to hurt you. Now, some people will say, well, it can. And there's about 1% of the population, okay, that is hypersensitive to fluoride. And these are people, many of them, they could not shower, for instance, and they could not even brush their teeth with fluoridated toothpaste, even though it will stay on the surface. No, just that surface on their teeth or on their gums will make them sick. And there can be any number of symptoms. There can be headaches, there can be gastrointestinal problems, there can be rashes, all kinds of medical problems can erupt. Now, most people are not that sensitive. Now, right now, for instance, I just, unfortunately, I moved. Now, I lived outside of Portland, Oregon, which was happily unfluoridated. Didn't have to worry at all about it. I am now in a suburb of Boston, okay? I came here to be closer to my grandkids, which is wonderful. What is not wonderful is the water here, which is fluoridated, okay? So personally, I am not worried about taking a shower in fluoridated water. But you better believe I've got a filter and be making sure that any water I drink is going to be unfluoridated. So those are the measures I've taken. Again, it's costing me money, but this is what I'm going to do.
And from that measure, that leads me into this next question. Since you've obviously taken advantage of fixing your drinking water, what about for cooking? For some people, they'll buy bottled water, that's what they drink. But then when they go to cook, I'm going to boil spaghetti, I fill the water up from the tap and put that on my stove. Is that going to take care of the fluoride by boiling the water?
No, it won't. And that's a very good question, Jeff. I'm glad you brought that out. In fact, it could concentrate it. No, the water we'll be using for cooking, that will be unfluoridated too, both cooking and drinking, yes.
So you need a separate filter. They need to buy the bottled. And the side question on the bottles, are any bottles that have problems with what the bottle's made from, or any fluorides or anything inside that bottle that affects the water, or they've got that pretty well solved these days?
I'm not a fan of plastic bottles. I don't, not so much for the fluoride, but I just environmental. I mean, they can trash the planet, if we just use them once and throw them away. But there have also been some health questions about plastic in bottles like that. Glass, no problems at all if you're using glass bottles. So I would recommend, you can get, and I know some people have those large multi-gallon jugs that certain companies will bring around that you can set up, kind of like a water cooler at an office. That's an excellent alternative right there if you have a service like that in your city or town that provides that will deliver that at certain time intervals.
Okay, I got one good last one here for you, and then we'll let everybody else start having at you. What you were focusing on was the idea of the IQ, especially like with pregnant women and so on. Besides IQ, what are some of the most dramatic additional things that could happen to either infants or adults by having fluoride, besides worrying about brain issues that way?
Okay, well, the other brain issue is ADHD, increasing those. So those are the two big ones. And these, just in the last 3 years, a tremendous amount of science on this, really high quality studies. kind of international scientists, Canadian, American, and Mexican. They've done some of these studies in Mexico, they've done them in Canada, and really excellent studies. But this is probably the biggest concern right now, and it is often through it's through pregnant women. This is where it's happening. The pregnant women ingesting fluoridated water, or in case of Mexico, they use salt down there, an equivalent amount of fluoride they're ingesting. So that would be the main one there. I would say other harmful conditions, hypothyroidism, in other words, low thyroid levels. There has been a significant amount of science on this. We've known this really since the 60s, that the higher the fluoride, this can really influence hypothyroid patients. And what that can do is a number of symptoms. It can cause just lethargy. You're just tired all the time. They could do that. It's been linked to depression. It's been linked to obesity. So a lot of different things happen when you kind of mess with your thyroid gland. So that's a major one itself. Kidney problems. You notice the National Kidney Foundation stopped endorsing fluoridation. There are real serious concerns about its effect on kidneys. In fact, there was a case, a very tragic case of when kidney patients undergo, severe kidney patients undergo dialysis. That water has to be purified to make sure that it doesn't have any fluoride in it. And there was a real tragic case, I believe it was in Chicago, I'm not sure about that, when several patients died when there was an overload of fluoride in that water that they received in dialysis. So those are some big ones right there. Probably the most common one, again, is dental fluorosis, and this is the staining of the teeth. And fluoridation proponents will say, oh, it's just a cosmetic issue. Don't have to worry about that. It's not harming you. It's just some white spots on your teeth or some white stripes, just cosmetic. And some people even find them attractive. Well, in the first place, yes, that's the most common kind, the lower level of fluorosis. However, many people also have moderate fluorosis. The moderate is yellowing, and it can cause damage to the enamel of the teeth. And severe is pretty rare, but that is definitely brown stains and kind of crumbling of the teeth. That's pretty rare. But the moderate, we're talking about many people in the United States this is affecting, and they have to have treatments to take care of this. So dental fluorosis is an obvious sign of overexposure to fluoride. And there is no two ways about it. And you can sugarcoat it and say, oh, it doesn't look that bad. That doesn't escape that fact. So a lot of different harmful medical conditions have been linked to fluoride.
You sort of sounded like one of those commercials where they tell me how I'm going to get my hair restored, but then you just read slowly the list of all the side effects.
Yes.
So there you go. Charles, I see your hand is up.
Yes. Rick, there's a couple of equivalents with some of your talking points with problems in other industries. You showed that one graph showing cavity reduction prior to introduction of fluorides, which is pretty similar in dynamic to the reduction in communicable diseases prior to vaccination, which shocks a lot of people when they show that decline in diseases from engineering. So if not fluoride, what reduced cavities?
That's a good question, and I asked that question myself because from that graph you could see, I believe it started in the 50s or 60s, and then for about another 3 or 4 decades going down. I don't think it was just one reason. I think one was just people were taking better care of their teeth. This is not rocket science here. If you brush your teeth, then your chances are you're going to have fewer cavities. And fluoride topically And there's a general consensus on this. The effectiveness of fluoride, even the CDC admits this, the effectiveness of fluoride is mainly topical. So there have been, there's quite a bit of science, that topical applications, such as in toothpaste, mainly in toothpaste, has been helpful in reducing cavities. So there's that, and this became more prevalent, I believe, in the 60s and 70s when fluoridated toothpaste became more available. And at that time, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, people began brushing their teeth and began taking care of their teeth better. And people began visiting the dentists more. Your professional care does help, there's no doubt about it. You go in and get your teeth cleaned and checked, and maybe cavities taken care of when they're small. So it's a combination of things, and I think people, generally speaking, started eating better, more nutritiously. But there's a caveat to that, because the advent of junk food, that has definitely cut into this. And the more junk food, and Americans, we eat a lot of junk food. It was kind of a classic case in Norway during World War II. Between the World War II, then the years 41 to 45, they had most of their sugar cut off. So kids in Norway really didn't have access to much sugar at all. Well, those kids ended up having really, really good teeth. So you can see what an effect sugar has had. And unfortunately, and that's just to protect yourself. Again, reduce your amount of sugar and processed foods. That's one of the very best things you can do to protect your teeth.
Charles, I think you had a little follow-up there.
Yeah, and another similarity you showed among industries is the toxicology program at NIH, showing definitively that fluoride has, real risks. And, they question the help with the dental issues. The same dynamic happened with wireless and telecom and FCC. Toxicology program at NIH found grave harm, DNA damage, and cancer from wireless, totally ignored by the FCC, which refuses to update its standards. I wonder, Jeff, if we could cajole Dr. Ackland to unmute himself and talk about fluoride and other toxins interfering with his work in his gut biome, pioneering research. If he's still on the call, he may have hung up. Do you see Dr. Ackland still on there, Jeff?
He actually was on, and then he was off, and then he was trying to get back on again, and I don't see that he's back in here. But maybe instead, since we've got Jane here, Jane Dolan, maybe you can comment. I know you've been working with a variety of biological dentists. Am I catching you on an availability? There you are.
Myself. Hi there. No, I had the same question about the the microbiome and what the effect on the gut is from the fluoride. I would be very interested in any data that you have on that.
I don't have a whole lot of data on that, to be honest with you. I do know that I mentioned the hypersensitivity issue. Again, we're talking, generally speaking, about 1% of the population. And I know that just for that 1%, ingesting fluoride, or in extreme cases, just even topical applications of fluoride, like taking a shower or even just brushing your teeth, a number of those people, you're talking, they can get seriously ill with nausea like that, and problems like that. So that much I know. The exact science of, on a molecular basis, what's happened, I really don't know on that, just generally the effects it can have on some people.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Can I ask a follow-up question? I'm Paul McGavin.
Yes, please, Paul.
Okay, great. I'm a fellow advocate here in Northern California, and I know very much about that whole wireless struggle because we've been working on this full time for the last 5 years. And so my question is about the American Cancer Society, because they've known this NIH study from the National Toxicology Program, including the Ramazzini, which followed up afterwards. And it's a long line of big studies. that are showing that a good number of people are adversely affected by cell towers near their houses. But the American Cancer Society just keeps coming back with some really plain vanilla statement. There's no evidence showing any harm, which clearly is not true. But we're wondering, how does that happen? And who do we have to talk to for them to finally look at the same kinds of data you're looking at in fluoride? It's kind of the same process, right? You're kind of seeing what the data says and you go, you thought it was okay, but now it's not. Who should we reach out to there? Because I look at the directors and only one person's medical. That's William Gantz. Karen Knutson's an MBA. The other people are legal people and financial people. So it looks like it's not really a medical organization.
The American Cancer Society, you're looking at their board of directors. I'm not familiar with these people. It's been a while since I worked with them, and I have to say I haven't checked I have not checked their website on the cell towers, so I really can't.
Well, they're a big problem. It really comes down to funding. That's what
it's a problem. You know, it's interesting with the cell towers. I really don't know. I mean, but I have heard exactly what you're saying now, and that hey, there has been science out there that have indicated some health hazards here. I'm not an expert on that.
Well, that's okay. You don't need to be an expert. Yeah. I mean, all I'm saying to you is it's very well established in the science, and there are a group of maybe 10% of the US population which can't live near a cell tower. It's just torture. And so the answer is that we really do have rights, but excuse me, little cough here. But the issue is, you know, you can't get any purchase. Everyone's just bought into the whole, 4G, 5G, you got to do it.
Yeah, I've heard enough commercials on those. Yes, this is.
Well, it's really bad. I'm just letting you know.
Yeah.
It's bad for kids, bad for school. And if you just wire up your in personal environment, you'll be better off too. You talk about reducing your IQ. Oh, you want to improve your memory and you want to improve your brain function? Turn off your wireless router. That will help a lot.
Yeah.
So okay, well, thank you.
Interjecting for a second on that, we actually have had a couple guests on the show, so you'll want to look through the archive talking specifically about that. And there's some really good organizations that are in that continuing the conversation area to help thwart those, because they've got certain little test areas where they're literally putting one like every block. And those people are like trying to revolt, but you know, industry, everybody's just plowing forward. So
well, no, we've revolted in California. We got a veto of our bill 4 years ago, and we're going to defeat 3 more bills in the next month. So
well, that's what it requires. You know, that's 100% what it's going to take, because it just starts that groundswell. And this is what the connector talks subsequently about this topic, because this is a super important one for our program. We've been trying to focus on this for a while. Like you said, it's all stealthily happening so fast no one can see it, and it's promoted like it's fun, it's good, everything about it is positive except for the one thing, which is that it's a killer. So,
well, beyond the health, it's a 24/7 surveillance grid, and you got the social credit score coming your way. You're going to live like China. You don't like this at all.
There's the other ulterior motive, like everything has. But let's not take away from Rick for a minute. Let's stay on topic for a second. But I appreciate that. But I see, Chuck, I've got your hand up.
Here.
Yes.
There's several things that can be used to get fluoride out of the body. Boron is a mineral that binds to sodium fluoride. And that's a very good method of removing it very inexpensively. There are some herbs that are very effective, like turmeric and cayenne, parsley, chlorella, and citrulline as well. And there's also a possibility that silica, nanoparticle silica, will also be able to remove sodium chloride, fluoride sodium. And sometimes it turns out that this is made from not just other the products that were mentioned. It's also a part of aluminum tailings. That a lot of this fluoride is made from aluminum tailings, and that's where the possibility of having the silica as a chelator comes in. And there's just been a study that came out recently about the curcumin, which is another form of turmeric, and it also has been shown to actually take almost all sodium, all fluoride out of the body. And zinc as a danger. Some of this fluoride actually reduces zinc levels, and it's the zinc level reduction that's similar to chlorine that actually causes cancer. It leads to about 5 or 6 different cancers. So I would throw sodium, I would throw fluoride into that as well.
Yeah, the question has come up. Thank you for that. I wasn't even aware of those. The question has come up about cancer, and the main scientific link that I'm aware of in terms of cancer has been osteosarcoma, excuse me, especially in boys. And this is bone cancer in boys. And there has been a significant scientific study, which has never been totally refuted at all, even though the pro-fluoridationists say it has. It hasn't. Showing that it can increase the rates of osteosarcoma in boys. And that has been the main concern. It's a fairly rare cancer, but it certainly occurs. So that's where I'm aware of, and actually the National Research Council, they brought that up in their report. But thank you. In terms of ingestion, it's a good point you brought up. About 50% right now, the fluoride you ingest stays with you, mostly in the teeth and bones. The other 50% is excreted. And when it does accumulate in bones over years, this is increasing in bone fractures. And this has become a very serious issue. Obviously, for people like me with gray hair, the older crowd, so definitely this has been an issue too. But thank you for those suggestions on reducing the amount that you retain.
Excellent. Thanks, Dr. Benz. Charles, got time for one last question here. We're running out of time.
Thanks. Rick, it seems, who is behind this? Is it the aluminum industry looking for a place to dump the fluoride compound? It's a pretty toxic stew, right? It's not even just fluoride pure, number one. And given the regulatory capture of the agencies in this area and the other areas that we've discussed today, and that other slide you showed how long it takes to fix the problem, decades. How do we get people off of this religion called scientism? The science is settled, and restore humility in the proper approach to science, which is science is skepticism. It's questioning your facts and testing. That's number one thing. Who's behind this? How do we get out of the science and settled religion? And the third part question is, you mentioned Calgary, I mentioned Spokane. Where are the other local fronts for people to get more active on this? So the special interest behind this, the really strange religion of scientism that's keeping people from waking up. And number three, where are the other local fronts?
Okay, well, that's 3 really good questions. In fact, the who's behind this is, who's profiting from this? That's probably the most often asked question I get. I mentioned the aluminum industry back when the U.S. Public Health Service said, oh, it's perfectly safe and effective back in 1950. There was significant evidence that this was industry pressure, because fluoride in air pollution from the aluminum industry and zinc and steel, there's a lot of evidence that they were pushing to have fluoride in water put in as kind of like, well, hey, look, it's not so bad, and don't worry about it, that you just drink and it's preventing. And there was a fair amount of evidence of heavy industry influence at that time. However, now, as much as you can point to these industries, but it's especially the phosphate fertilizer industry more than any, you could say, well, look, they're making money twice. One, they're selling it to cities, so they're making money that way. And then they don't have to dispose of it in hazardous waste facilities, which is expensive. So they're making out on 2 ends. So you could say, are they definitely profiting? Absolutely, they are. As are engineering firms that would build the fluoridation equipment. So there is some industry, profitability there. However, in this case, unlike, say, if you look at the tobacco industry, they want to protect their profits from cigarettes. You look at Monsanto, they want to protect their profits from Roundup, glyphosate. Industry, pesticide industries, they're going to be, fighting the science all the way. You can point to them. With fluoride, it's different because for the most part, it isn't industry, it's the US medical establishment. And it is the CDC, it's the American Dental Association, and the American Academy of Pediatrics is right up there too, and all the organizations that follow them. It is the US medical establishment. And I think in terms of like, why are they doing this? What's wrong here? And I've come to the conclusion, because I've asked myself this question, I think it comes down to probably plain old human nature. If you have put yourself out there and said, hey, fluoridation is the greatest thing since sliced bread, especially if you made a public statement, you are going to be inclined to say you don't want to hear anything to the contrary. And any study that comes along, no. And it's just safer they circled the wagons instead of admitting that they were wrong. They, frankly, I don't think have the courage to admit it. And I think that is what is happening. They are afraid they will lose face. And they will not admit that they made a major mistake. Well intended. I mean, it wasn't like you had a bunch of villains, dentists and doctors. They were, for the most part, just today. Most of the people supporting fluoridation, they're not villains. They want to do the right thing. They just don't know. Well, now we know. And we've known for a number of years. And the fact that they're not saying, we've learned more, we need to change, that's on them. I don't have a magic silver bullet for people going to authority figures. And we all do it. We can't personally research every single issue that comes along. Today I had electricians at my house putting in outlets in the garage. Okay, these are authority figures. They know electricity. I don't. I defer to them. The same thing with a plumber. The same thing most of the time with my doctor. I'm going to defer to authority and the organizations.
Well,
But
that's the problem.
it is a problem because you got to look underneath, because with fluoridation, it is more than the government like allowing certain things. They allow certain things to happen. With fluoridation, they're promoting it. They are out there spending money promoting fluoridation. It is a double whammy. And I don't, other than just constant us human beings beating on their doors, letting people know on programs like this, this is wrong. You have got to stop doing this. And that is, I don't know of a shortcut. I don't know of a magic bullet, silver bullet. It's just hard work and constant informing the public and recruiting them to get on your side. And you mentioned cities. There are really the two biggest ones are Calgary by far. Spokane has a population of about 200,000. That's kind of in limbo right now, which is in some ways good. We're continuing to work with the city council there, trying to get them to stop the process of moving forward. I don't know of any other big city. However, I do know of some countries like the UK, England, and New Zealand. There's been a lot of pressure at the national level to force mandatory fluoridation on all their citizens. This is a serious issue. So we're trying to work with activists in both New Zealand and the UK to, again, just get your feet on the ground and work with others to put a stop to this, because they are going forward in spite of all the science that's come out. It's really, really a very bad thing going on. And that's what we're trying to stop.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, we're going to leave everyone wanting, because the question becomes, what's the motive to do this? Why would they want to deliberately dumb down their nation, as it were? So that we're going to save that. So that's where everyone's going to have to go to that, continuing the conversation and get connected with you. And let's keep this thing going. So on that note, I definitely want to thank you so much for today.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Chuck. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on your program.